so that leads to the next point. There are a lot of people in here who have not attended a webinar or have not attended a webinar with me before. So one thing that I like to stick to is I think it's helpful and important to be able to ask questions and have them answered when they are relevant to what I am talking about, okay? So please, I love your feedback. I love even when you're like, oh, that's cool, I've never seen that before, or, you know, anything like that. And then, of course, if you have any questions on anything I'm doing, ask it, okay? I will answer it if I can, and if I don't answer it, I might be saving it for later when it's more applicable to like something else that I'm bringing up, okay? Terry, send me an email because I have some theories about that. Terry's having issues cutting with the auto blade. Send me an email because I have some theories, but I don't want to get too into it in today's webinar, okay? So with that being said, hi Dax. With that being said, before we get going, just type in the questions box here. What version of Silhouette Studio are you using currently? Are you using the basic Silhouette Studio free edition? Are you using Designer edition, or are you using Business edition? Let me know. Beulah, you'd like to update to Designer edition. That is no problem. They do sell an upgrade. So basically you can go to our website or Amazon or whatever, maybe our website. Basically you choose that you want Designer edition, you purchase it, and then you will get an email with a code. And then that code will allow you to upgrade to Business edition. You'll just update it through your software, and I do have a video accompanying that. Okay, so we have a lot of Designer edition, Business edition. I would say we're half and half. Lee says that they're running free version but gonna buy Business Monday. Cool. So free is awesome. The Business edition is awesome. I definitely like if you are even considering it, Business is totally worth it in my opinion, just with the things that it offers. I'm gonna tell you one thing too, guys. I'm in the beta program for Silhouette Studio, okay? So I have the next big update. I'm running it on my laptop to test out some things. And if you are even somewhat considering Business Edition, get it now, because I think they're going to raise the price a little bit, and also you'll get all these cool features that are coming out, which I really love, and I can't wait to show you guys, but I can't show you quite yet. Okay? Awesome. And so, and some people want to see how it will benefit them. So cool. So we have pretty much everyone in here. Let me drink some coffee. One thing just to keep in mind, I know a lot of you are having issues with AutoBlade. Check out a couple of the troubleshooting videos. Sometimes AutoBlade has to do with connection issues with your software. Make sure your software is updated, but also make sure the firmware on your machine is updated, okay? All right, let's go ahead and get started. Again, don't forget, ask questions, let me know what you think. This webinar is going to take between 30 and 45 minutes, depending on what questions are asked, if you want me to review anything. One thing to note is that this is a free basic webinar. So in this webinar, I will not be going over designing. This is strictly an overview of Designer Edition, letting you know what features are in here, you know, where the buttons are, and some basic items in there. Now, if you would like to see designing, we do have other webinars that cover that, and then also on the TRW Academy, I do a lot of my designing on that as well. So this is kind of to just get you familiar with the software, help you be comfortable with it, and then go on from there, okay? So are you guys ready? Do you guys want to start the webinar? All right. So I am running Business Edition on my screen. So you may see some of the buttons look a little bit different. I may have some extra buttons if you're not running Business Edition. However, everything that I do cover today will be Designer Edition. So I won't, you know, pull a mean trick on you and show you something cool you don't have, okay? So this is Designer Edition. Again, if you don't have Designer Edition, if you're still running free, you won't see some of these buttons, but hopefully you will want to get Designer Edition after today's webinar. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So I am running Silhouette Studio version 4.1, okay? So about a year and a half ago, Silhouette Studio updated to 4.0. It was a complete facelift. So you can see in here we have a pretty dark color scheme, and now Silhouette Studio is very icon and image heavy. So that is useful because it kind of translates internationally. You don't have to worry about reading things and languaging, and it all works from there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of these buttons. I'm going to kind of fly through here, and then I'm going to focus a lot of my time over on the right side of my screen because that's kind of like where the meat is, and that's where the benefit of Designer Edition comes into play. So right here, this top bar over at the top, you'll see it has black in here. This is, it's like a save panel. It's very similar if you run any other programs like Word, all of that. We have new document, open document, save, and print. I actually used floppy disks when I was younger, but it's always a little bit funny to me that floppy disk is still the icon for save, even though we haven't used them in at least 10 years. And then over here, we do have some options grayed out. These options are grayed out because there's nothing selected right now. There's nothing in there, but this is your cut, copy, and paste right here. You can use those buttons, but guys, I totally recommend use your shortcuts for copy and paste. Do Control-C for copy, Control-V for paste. All right, and then we have our undo and redo if we make an uh-oh during designing. So again, do a shortcut for undo if you can. That's Control-Z. Totally useful, totally worth it. I definitely recommend it. Now up here, I'm going to come back to it in a little bit, but this is multiple undo. Now this is one thing that's super cool about Silhouette Studio. Brandy, this will go on YouTube. About Silhouette Studio is that now you can see a list of all the actions you've done, and you can go back multiple steps without having to do Control-Z, 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 Control-Z. So I'm going to show you that once we get going and actually showing you some steps. So you have our multiple undo, and then you also have your select all, deselect all, and then select by color, which I will show you that as well. And then we have our different zoom options. So as far as this top bar here, I think, and in my use of Silhouette Studio, this is what I use the most, okay? So you have your zoom in, zoom out, pretty self-explanatory. My favorite tool in this panel is the select zoom. So you can see we have our little mouse here. You can click over here at draw box, and this will zoom into where you draw your box, okay? So this is like a select zoom. You can be very precise on where you are zooming in. All right, and then we have the zoom in and out using mouse. I don't super love it. Your mouse turns into a arrow. I'm clicking, I'm holding my mouse down. So if I bring my mouse up, I zoom out. If I bring my mouse down, I zoom in. It's okay. I don't love it, but some people do. And then we have our little hand zoom, little pan, so I can take my hand and move it, but it only does one action, so I don't super love that either. Now, let's say we've been designing, we've been zooming in and out, we've been moving stuff, and now we want to see our whole design, we want to see our whole workspace. Then this button right here is what I use all the time. I'm going to click this button and fit to window. That fits our whole workspace in there, okay? So those are good things to know for designing. Those are good things to know when working in software. So now we're going to go over to this left panel here. Now, this is going to change in a couple, I actually don't know, but this will be updated for the newest software update. It's going to be pretty cool. But right here, this is what I like to call, and the way I remember it is this is kind of basically the draw panel. This is where you can create things. So this first button is your select tool. This is what you're going to use all the time to select your items, move them, that sort of thing. When in doubt, go to your select tool. All right, so we have that right here. And then this button right here is your edit points. We're going to get to that in a little bit. Basically, this is how you edit the points in your design to kind of manipulate the shapes. And now we have our different line options. So first of all, we have our line tool. Do that, we can draw our lines here. Now, one thing to note about Silhouette Studio, and actually the majority of design software, is that holding down the shift button, can help with basically, I kind of like call it symmetry, I guess, when designing. So if I hold down shift while drawing my line, you can see that it goes in a perfectly straight line. Now with something like this, if I'm holding down shift, it'll allow me to draw it at 45-degree increments. So this will help if I have to draw a perfectly straight line or anything like that. Now I'm going to use my select tool, select all of these and delete them so I can go on to the next point. Now we have our polygon tool. So this allows me to draw points And then once I'm ready to close it, you can see I have this red dot here and that red dot that starts it. A red dot in Silhouette Studio and most design software indicates an unclosed line, okay? So that means that this line is not finished, but if I bring this over to here, you can see it kind of snaps to that. This will close my shape, and then I have a shape that I drew. What makes your work area disappear and the area looks like a white blank page when going to display to fix doesn't fix? Becky, I'm not super sure. Maybe send me a screenshot or something, because I'm not super sure exactly what's happening. I might need to kind of check it out. So now I have my polygon tool, and here's my smooth polygon. So this is very similar to the last one, but what this does is it kind of tries to smooth out what you're doing when you're working in here. So these shapes, you kind of use them if you want to make your own shape. This is what I use if I want to do a manual trace of an object. So let's say I had a picture of something. I would basically take my little line, go around the outside of it, and start tracing, you know, a picture of that. All right, so we have that set. And then the last one is the arc tool. I like to use this a lot when I'm trying to curve text and I don't want to draw a circle. I'm clicked once, click again, and then now I can bring my mouse down and there is an arc being made. So if I click one more time to set it, I can use this little lever, you know, bring it down, bring it up. I can make that arc smaller or larger and kind of go from there. All right, so now we have our shape tools. Let's go ahead and do our rectangle, click and drag. We have a rectangle. Now, one thing to note when working in Silhouette Studio, and this is kind of a trick just to help in general, when in doubt, look at your cursor or your mouse to see what you're gonna do, okay? A lot of times, and I've done this too, I go to try to select something and I end up drawing like a square or something, and it makes me so mad. One thing to note, when you're about to draw something, your mouse, if you look at my mouse right now, it's crosshairs. So crosshairs mean you're about to create something, you're about to draw something. If I need to select something, I have my little pointer here. Arrow means I have the select tool going, but then this little finger, the pointer finger, means I'm about to select something, like something is in range to select. So keep that in mind when you are selecting or working with something. See what your mouse is doing, okay? So now let's go back to the rectangle tool. So I drew my rectangle, and then you guys remember I said hold down shift, okay? So if I hold down shift, now I have a perfect square, okay? And now this also applies for the circle tool. So we have our oval, and then hold down shift, perfect circle. So now I want to get rid of all these. Let me use my select tool, select it all, and delete it. And then we have two more tools in this shape panel. We have the rounded rectangle. You can see we have our rectangle, and then we have these little points here where we can control the curve on this. I'll be totally honest, I don't really use this tool much. The two shape tools that I do use all the time are my squares and circles. And then we do have this shape tool. If you do want to use it, look at my crosshairs, click once, drag out. And so this will start with a polygon, 5 sides. You can use this slider to increase the number of sides on there, and you can go down to 3 sides. So if I ever do use this tool, I typically use it to create triangles, but also let's go back to point editing to show you another way. So if I hold down shift to draw a square, remember I talked about the point editing, you can go to point editing, click on this. So we have our points here. You can move them around to change your shape. I'm gonna hit Control Z. And then let's say I want this to be a triangle. I can also click on this point here, go right here. This right here is delete point, check that out. So now I have another triangle as well. So a little trick with that. And then we have our draw freehand. I'm just gonna go really quickly. It draws lines. And then we have our smooth one. It tries to kind of correct for you so it can tell I'm trying to draw a straight line, and then it'll fix it for me. I can tell you how many times I've used this. Never, okay? Just a note. So here's one thing that gets confusing for people, so let me make sure to clarify. Right here, this A is our text tool, okay? So you're gonna see an A in 2 places in our software. We have this one right here on the left, and then I'm going to the right side of my screen, and this one over here on the right. Now, take note, there is a difference between those icons, okay? You have your plain A here, but then you also have your A with a little cursey line over there, all right? So this on the right is where it edits your design. This on the left is where you type out what you're doing. So let's go over to our text. Check it out. What does my mouse look like? It looks like the little cursey line. Let me get some coffee. And so now that indicates we're about to create a text box. So let's go down, click on here. So now we have our line, we can type our text, all set with that. So that is where we create our text, and then over here is where we edit. I will come back to that, okay? Now right below is a very undervalued item in Silhouette Studio. This is where you can draw a note. So for something like this, I can make a note for myself like use colors, royal blue, red, and rainbow white. Okay, so I can put these little notes in here for my design so I know to kind of move them, to work with them later. Now one thing to note, you can still move them, you just have to look for that over there, and that saves in your Silhouette Studio software. So how many of you, be totally honest, how many of you didn't even really know that sticky notes were in here? Be totally honest. And how many of you have? I'm going to ask you some questions because you guys have kind of slowed down in saying stuff to me. I got a never knew. Who else? Who else knew or didn't know? So some people did. Because here's the thing, I don't use them all that much. I probably should. I think I put too much faith in my memory, but I really should start putting notes in there because if someone needs to use my files, they need to be able to do that. How do you access the notes when you close that design? So basically the notes are tied into that design file. So you can't, it's not notes in general for whatever you want, like sticky notes on your computer, but it works with that file in there. So I like doing that. I've been trying to be better about doing notes. I've been trying to be better about using my planner. It's all a learning process. All right, so let's continue down this left panel. We have our eraser tool. It erases parts of our design. The one thing you just need to keep in mind about it, let me draw a shape to show you with our eraser tool. Right here, the options for the eraser tool are going to show up in this toolbar right here. So you'll notice as we're using Silhouette Studio, this white toolbar changes the options, okay? So this is what's called the quick access toolbar. So what it does is it basically sees what you've selected and tries to give you options that are relevant to what you have. So right here with the eraser tool, you have solid and outline. So for that, if I have it on outline, it's going to erase that line and kind of break apart that shape. Let's do Control-Z to go back. If I do solid, it kind of like takes out that part of the design, but also keeps it closed. All right. So we have that over there. And then we have our knife tool. Cut that over there. And now I've cut this design into two pieces. Now, one thing to note about the knife tool is there are other knife options which are really cool. These are options that are only available in Designer Edition and up. So right here, if I click on straight, you can see all these different shapes of knives that you can do. So if I want to do sawtooth, I can go right here, do my sawtooth, and it cut, okay? Now, let's say I want to adjust how, I don't know, toothy the sawtooth is. Right here, you're going to uncheck auto apply. So that allows you to adjust the pattern of the knife. I can go right here, and then we have that little slider, so I can make more teethies or less teeth. And so more teeth like that. This gives me a good idea because maybe I'll use this little knife tool for a Halloween design because that looks like a cool, like, creepy patch thing. And then once we have this all set, we can go right here to apply. And then check that out. So now we have our cut. Is the knife tool how you make split monograms? Beulah, yes and no. The knife tool is a way to make a split monogram, and a split monogram is where you have a letter and it is split in half and you typically put a last name in there. You can do that. I'm going to show you when I get to another section called the modify panel, in my opinion, a better way to do that. So where do you apply? Let me go back for you. So in the knife panel, we have our options here. This is auto apply that I unchecked, and then we're gonna go right here, and right here is apply. That's when we apply the knife. So I clicked apply. There is our broken up design. Okay, so that is the, I don't know what they actually call it. I like to call it create panel or draw panel. Do you guys have any questions on any of those tools that I went over, or any comments? Or as my teachers used to say, any questions, comments, smart remarks, anything like that? Cool. Yes, the line tool, pretty easy. You just have that over there. Draw lines. How do you move the notes? Okay, so move Terry. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck? So some of the questions remind me of two things that I need to bring up. When you are using this panel, a lot of these have nested options. So look at these buttons. If they have this little notch in the corner, triangles, then that means there are more in there. So you just have to hover over and find them. So at some point, maybe you've clicked a button and on your line tool, you see this little polygon, but the line tool is the third option down on the left panel. Hover over, we can click on line and then draw there. And then I saw another question, how do you move the notes? So the notes are tricky. So let's say you're typing, see how you have these boxes around it? Just make sure you are hovering over, and remember what I told you about your mouse? Look at your mouse, okay? Make sure your mouse is a pointer. If your mouse is a pointer over your sticky note, then you can move it, okay? But if you're doing it and you're like trying to move it, look at, I'm not moving it, but also my mouse is that little text edit cursor line, okay? So finger, move, all right? Because remember, you move things with your hands. So your mouse needs to look like a hand to move it, all right? Does that make sense? All right. Let's go over to the right side of our screen. Now this is where you're going to spend the most time designing, and this is kind of where the real power of Silhouette Studio is. So I'm going to fly through some of them that you don't use much because I want to focus more time on a couple other things. Okay, so the first thing that's going is right here on the right side of my screen. You may have noticed it. It's over there. How do you delete the note? Let me go back and do that. No. So how do you delete the note? So I clicked on it. Oh yeah, okay. So basically, select it like you would anything else. When I do that, it has a slight gray line around it. It's very, very subtle. But we have that slight little gray line about it. I deleted it. I just pressed the delete key. All right, so you'll notice that this page setup is here. That opens by default. Now, one cool thing about Designer Edition in, well, Silhouette Studio in the newest version is you can move these little windows. So let's say there's an option you use a lot. You can kind of move it and keep it in your workspace so it doesn't disappear. But I kind of keep it like that. Now, this has a bunch of different options. All right, so this controls your workspace. All right, so my personal preference, I always like to have my workspace set at 12 by 12. It's just something I like to do. I like to have a lot of space. Now let's say you are working on a smaller piece of material. I can change my width to 6 inches if I want, and so you can see width is 6 inches and height is 12. Now, do you guys see how my arrow moved and it changed the orientation? So this is setting up my design in regards to how my material loads into my mat. Okay, so if you're cutting a smaller piece of vinyl and you're cutting on the mat, then we can go right here to cutting mat. I had none. We can do Cameo. And so now you can see I have a 6-inch wide, 12-inch tall piece of material. Let's say it's 5 inches tall. We can go right here. And now you can see that it's set up on my mat, okay? Now, this is not the grid per se that someone asked earlier. I'm gonna get to that. So let's go over here, 12, and then let's say by 12. And one thing while I'm still on this section, I don't know if you know, hopefully you do, but the silhouette can cut longer than a foot. You can cut 3, 4, 5 feet. The longest I've cut is 9 feet. The silhouette guarantees the tracking up to 10 feet. I like to push the limit. you basically can cut a lot longer. So let's say I want to cut, 36 inches long. I want to cut 3 feet long. All right, so let me go right here, view my whole workspace. So now I have this long piece, okay? Now, when you are designing in Silhouette Studio, there is something called a cut border. You can see down here, it's show cut border. This red line around our software is the safe space of where things will cut in our designing, okay? So you'll notice if I do a big design down here, so let me kind of, just type a little something, whatever, not a big deal. Lisa's awesome, whatever. So we go right here. One thing that I forgot to show you, you can rotate your design. So see this little green dot here? I'm gonna turn it, and then it kind of goes at whatever angle. Hey, don't forget, I can hold down Shift, and now it locks in place. So Lisa's awesome, I'm gonna cut this big design. Here's the problem. If I were to cut this right now, the way this is gonna cut, it's gonna stop in this S. Because see, this S is within the red line. Now, what is happening is you have told the software, I'm cutting on a cutting mat. So when the software gets to the end of the cutting mat, it's going to say, I can't cut anymore. There's no more mat. So if you're going to cut a long design, you can go right here and turn off your cutting mat. Check it out. Your red line extends, and you can go to the end. Now, a word to the wise, if you have a 20-inch piece of glitter HTV, 20 inches by a foot, you cannot actually design your design to be a full 20 inches wide, okay? Because when you are feeding in your material, you need to factor in extra space for your machine to hold on to it. So like, here's my white, this is some glitter I had right here. You need to factor in this space right here for your rollers to hold on to it. And then once you're cutting towards the end, so let's pretend I'm loading it in this way and it's going that way, you can't actually cut all the way to this end piece here because your roller, there's space between your roller and your blade to hold it steady. So if you're trying to cut a long piece and like you find out right at the end of your design, your vinyl slips and goes off, you're probably cutting too close to the edge. So troubleshooting tip, word to the wise, be careful with that. So let me go ahead, delete this guy. I'm going to turn my cutting mat back on, and I'm going to make my cut settings 12 inches by 12 inches. Okay, so back to normal. Now, right here, we have a couple more settings. Someone asked about the grid earlier. So in Silhouette Studio, you have your flyouts here, and then you have tabs, okay? So this second tab is to turn on the grid. Hold on. Nick had an issue. You can... Sorry, little issue. So you can turn on this tab here, and then this is where you show the grid. So you need that right here, show grid. And now you have your grid settings turned on. And then right here, we have your divisions. So let's say I want my grid to be just 1 inch by 1 inch, then I would just do no divisions. And so there's my 1 inch by 1 inch. If I want to have by ½ inch, we'll do 2. We have that all set. No big, okay? So one thing to note, make sure you don't have snap to grid turned on. I don't like it. Basically, when you want to move a design, it's going to snap to these divisions in here, and it makes it really difficult. I do have a video on that on YouTube. Now, grid settings are great if you want it. I personally do not like it. I don't like using the grid, so I always turn it off. Chrissy, you don't need the mat to keep cutting. Yeah, that's right. You don't need the mat to keep cutting, but if you have told the software that you have a cutting mat, it will not cut longer than where the mat should have been. All right, so the last part of page setup is for registration marks. I'm not gonna get too much into that. That is for print and cut. If you do wanna learn print and cut, I do have videos on YouTube, and I actually have one that I'm about to record. So I'm just gonna move on because you don't really need that. All right, so we have our pick scan mat. This, again, I have videos on YouTube. This is a special, like a super specialty thing that Silhouette does. For our basic designing, we don't need that. All right, so now we're at our fill panel. So when we are designing, I always say, try to fill your design. You want to fill in your shapes, 1, because it gives you a better idea of how the shape looks. 2, it's going to give you a better idea of the color. You can choose a color similar to what you're going to cut. And then 3, it's easier to see what order your shapes are in your workspace. Now, that may not seem like an important thing, but once we get further into the modify panel, that's going to make a lot of sense. So let's go over here, draw a shape. So I have my rectangle. I'm going to select it. And then we have our fill panel here. I'm going to make it red. I'm going to make it green. All of those things. Now, one thing to note, if you have watched a lot of my videos and webinars, I never use this fill panel over here. So if you notice, look at all these options that have shown up for our design. Now, this will change based on what kind of object you have selected and how many you have selected. So right here, my quick access toolbar, I can quickly use this, change my fill color. Okay, so if you watch me design, then you will notice that a lot of times I use this one right here because it's faster. Now, there are benefits to using this fill panel because this right here only has like basic colors, but I can go right here in the fill panel on the right, go to advanced options, and I can choose whatever color I want. I can super specialize it. And then let's say you are working with a graphic designer, a web developer, and they give you color codes. You can even put in your color codes here to do that. So someone just said, I made the square, but the fill doesn't fill the square. I can almost guarantee what's happening. So when you want to change something about an object, you want to fill an object, keep in mind you need to select the item first before you make your change. So look at my workspace right now. My square is in there, but I don't have a box around it, which means it's not selected. So if I go right here and click on colors, I'm clicking all over the place. Nothing's happening because basically what's happening right now is I'm telling Silhouette, oh, hey, look at all these pretty colors, but I have not told it where that color needs to apply. So when you draw your square, make sure you're back on your select tool, select it. You want to look for this box around it, and then you can change the color. All right. How do I change the color so quick? I mean, I'm just clicking fast. All right. So we got that. And so that is our fill color. So I'm going to go really quickly. Then you have fill gradient. This is for print and cut. It's whatever. And then you have fill pattern. Again, this does not actually print on your vinyl because this is just if you're doing print and cut. So I'm just going to kind of move on from there. All right, so now we have our next option. We have our line style. So check this out. So when we draw our shape, let me delete this. When we draw our shape, we'll see, oh, I gotta turn off that setting. I have that autofill setting and I hate it. When we draw, oh, let me show you one thing. In your fill, you have all your colors. I'm on the left side of the screen. This little thing right here, this little crosshatch pattern means nothing. So if you want to take out the fill, you can click on that and it'll take the fill completely out. Now let's say you're working with a design and the red line around it is really confusing. You don't like it. You can go over to your line style, go to this part that has different colors, and you can change the color of your line. Now, one thing I want to say about that is that for line style right here, these style, thickness, and cap position, that is basically almost exclusively for printing. So if you want to quickly change your line color to make it easier for your designing for vinyl, use this quick access toolbar. So right here, this first option is your fill color. The second option is your line color. So then you can quickly choose that and change your line color. You don't have to open line style and go to the next tab. All right. You didn't tell us the microphone. Oh yes, so right here, this is, it looks like a microphone. This is an eyedropper. So let's go over here and I'm gonna draw a couple more squares to show you. All right, so let's say I have a special color and I want something else to be the color. So if I click right here, so I am modifying this square here. I'm gonna click right there and I'm gonna click my eyedropper or microphone. So now, see my mouse changes? I can go right here, this square is selected, go right here, and it transferred that color. So the eyedropper is like a transfer properties button. So you can go over there and change your colors quickly to match something else. All right, so right here we have our trace panel. So let me go over and I'm just gonna grab a picture. So this is how we take a picture from the internet, and I don't recommend always doing this because it's stealing, but if we need to convert a image to a vector. So I grabbed a little picture, I'm going to paste in here. So we have our anchor. You can see right here, if I double click, the points are in the corners. I can't actually cut this, it's just a picture file. So I'm going to click on this. Let's open our trace panel, and then right here select trace area, and I'm going to draw a box around here. Now for this part, I'm going to go kind of quickly because I do have a lot of videos explaining each one, and I want to be able to kind of do a broad look at everything for you. Now check it out. Whatever is yellow is your final object once you're done. Okay, so this is how we make something cuttable, all right? So you'll see with this one, the majority of our shape is yellow. I can bring down the threshold or the power and kind of not get towards the edge, or I can even increase my threshold to make sure I get a little bit more, a little bit of a cleaner line. So here's my final shape. It's yellow. You don't really need most of these. Scale will kind of make the lines sharper and cleaner. So I bring my scale all the way down, and then let's hit trace. So now we have our picture, and then here is our object that we just traced right there. Now I can fill it in, double click to get my points. So check it out, see how many points are in here? One bad thing about tracing is that a lot of times it doesn't do really smooth, clean lines. So you get really bumpy designs right there. Now there are a couple more trace options in there that I'm just gonna kind of tell you about and move on. So right here we have trace by color. Basically, if you have a picture that has multiple colors, you click that little eyedropper, it'll select the color and go on from there. And then you have your magnet trace, which is hardly ever used. If you want to see that, I have another video on that, but I can almost guarantee you don't need it. All right, so moving on very quickly, we have our image effects. These are almost exclusively for print. Basically, you can take a picture and kind of colorize it, take out brightness, all of that. So this is a very basic like picture editor. And then we have our text style window, all right? So this is used in conjunction with typing out our text here. If you have used Word before, you can use this panel. So in Silhouette Studio, they give you a frequently used. So these are fonts that I use pretty often, and then these are fonts that I used recently in designing or videos, and then it'll tell you all your fonts. So you can see you can edit your fonts here, your point size. So let's go ahead and type this out. Rhinestones. So we need to trace basic font designs we make before cutting. Tracy, no. If you are working with a font, this is already a cut file. The only time you have to trace is if you have an image that has not been converted to vector. So if we go over here, this will still cut. No problem. So right here we have our font, and I can go over here, click on different fonts that I have to change it. We have our point size, so you can either drag this out to make it bigger. You can see our point size over there. And then we also have some different editing in here. We can change our character spacing and that sort of thing with that as well. Most of the time you're just gonna type and go, and you're all set. What if you lose your font? What do you mean lose your font? So with your fonts, they're installed on your computer, so you shouldn't have any issue with that. Sometimes when you're done with your design, I always like to do a sticky note and type out what fonts I used in here after I convert it over. But we have that all set there. Now a textile window with Designer Edition, we also have this glyphs feature. So this will show you every icon that is in this font. Now this one is a basic like standard font, but if you have a font that has like little swirlies at the end or swooshes, this is where you would find it. You would go over to your glyph panel, grab that letter, let's say, I want this B, then you can go right here, do that B, and then change that over. So that's how you do your swirly font too. I type in nothing is showing. You probably need to turn on your text. Go to the left side, use your type tool, click in there, and then start typing. You want to see this flashing icon before you type. Oh no. That was weird. My K got stuck. All right, so we have that all set. So that is our text window. So let me go over here, and I'm going to draw a couple shapes for you to show you this next item that we're going to work with. Okay, so right here we have our transform panel. This is how you do your aligning and your respacing. So this is really important in designing because I like to make sure my designs are lined up correctly, they look nice. So the biggest piece of advice I can say about this panel is look at the pictures. All right, so this is how you line them up. You can see that these will line them up horizontally. So let's go ahead and kind of work from there. These will bring them all lined up on the edge. I'm hitting Control Z. These will line them up on the middle, Control Z, and then on the other side, Control Z. So for something like this, I can go right here, line them on the middle. They're all lined up. It's like a string was brought through the middle and they're all set up. And then So we kind of have that for each one of those. And then right here we have spacing. So this is the one that I love using. This tool is awesome. It's right here, spacing horizontal. So what the spacing tool does is it takes the first item and the last item in the sequence that you have, and it redistributes them easily. So you can see these squares, I did a okay job spacing them, but they're not perfect. So if we go right here to horizontal, you can see it moved these over. Let me do it one more time. Horizontal, moved it over, and now they're redistributed perfectly. So that's one thing to do about that. And then vertical does the same thing, just up and down. Now right here in transform, to be honest, I never go to the second page of transform panel because this shows up in the quick access panel. So if you can check our object here, we can scale it up by percentage, and then we can also specify the dimensions that we want it to be. So if we want this to be proportionate, we do this little lock. So basically, if I want this to be 6 inches wide, then for it to be proportionate, it will be 7 inches tall, and we can hit apply. And now we've resized our design. So this is something, if you have a design that you need to be a specific size, instead of going over here and dragging it to guess, you can type it in. Now, instead of going to this button, I do the quick access toolbar. So I'm gonna lock it up here, and let's say I want this to be 4 inches wide, hit tab, and then hit enter. And now I've resized it. So I do it from there. I think it's way easier, and that's all I have to say about that. And then this tab in transform is rotate. Again, never use it. I just use this little dot, and then I hold down shift to do 45-degree angles if that's what I'm doing. And then move by, don't even worry about it, just kind of move it with your mouse. And then we have our shear panel, which is cool, I just don't use it. We can go right here, and this will kind of manipulate it and shear it. And then you can also do things like that. I never use that, but hey, some people like it. And we can go right here, show shear handles, and then I can even shear it, whatever way that I want it to be. All right, so we have that, transform, and now 12:16, so I'm gonna start moving a little bit faster. We have our replicate. This will make copies. Look at the pictures. It makes copies up and down. How can I lock it back to black? Andriana, that will just be, it's gonna be in your preferences. Just check out your preferences on default colors. I don't know it off the top of my head. So then we have our rows and columns, that sort of thing. And then, we have all of this in here. And then mirror, we can flip it a certain way, and then we can even rotate it there. And so right here, I rotated, made a bunch of copies. Cool. And then, let me show you one more cool thing. Let me draw my circle. Oh, I hate this autofill. I gotta turn it off after this webinar. All right, so we have our circle here, and let's say we have our rectangle, or square, whatever. And then let's go ahead, I'm gonna take this fill off too. All right, so we have one more option that I think is super cool. Let's go over here to our object on path. So show grab handle, I've turned it on, and now this little circle showed up on my square. I can drag it over, and once it touches a line, check that out. It replicated it and put more on there. And then we can kind of change it. So we can change how many, so right here we have number of repeats. Let's say I only want 10. It'll bring 10, or it can kind of change a bunch of stuff. I can even take this handle and change how it starts, if I only want it on part of it, and that sort of thing as well. And so let's say we're all done and we like it, I can release copies, and now we have that, and it's all set. And then I can take this, right click, group it together. All right, so we have that. That's our replicate panel. So there are three sections I'm gonna go over that you're gonna need. These other ones we don't need as much, so I'm not even gonna talk about them. I'll have it in another session. So right here we have our modify panel. This is what you're going to use all the time. So let's go over here, let's draw my square, and let's draw a circle. All right, so let's change this color too. So you could easily make a circle of stars. Yep, Terry, that's actually what I use it the most for. All right, so I'm gonna go right here, and then let me go ahead and make a copy of this. Will we be able to view this later? Yes, this will go on YouTube. So I want to make a quick duplicate of these two so you can see the difference in these buttons. So I'm going to hold down my Alt button, Alt, Alt, and my mouse just turned into a plus sign, okay? So don't forget, you know, I'm going to say this over and over again. Look at your mouse. Look at what it changes to. So we're going to go over here, click and drag, and so now we have a duplicate of exactly what we are working with, okay? So check this out. We're all good. So this one on the left, I'm going to keep all the time so you can see the difference in the modify panel, all right? So we have our two shapes here. So what modify does is it takes one object and it modifies it by the other, okay? So let's go over here. Let's do this. Let's select both of these. So I'm going to drag my mouse, make sure I have both selected. And then we're going to go right here to weld. So weld is going to get rid of overlapping lines. It's going to combine them, weld them together. So let's go right here to weld. You can see I have one object. They're the same color. It's gotten rid of overlapping lines. This is what you use if you have a script font, okay? So let's do oops. So let's go right here. I'm going to change this font to a script one. And then let me zoom in, okay? So if we were to cut this right now, you can see, let me take off the fill on this, that these lines overlap. So it's going to cut these overlapping lines. So we're going to go right here, go to our modify panel and weld it. So now those overlapping lines are gone and then it's all set to go. So I'm going to delete that. All right, so let's go ahead and now I need to go back to make this two objects so you can see the next modification. So remember I talked about multiple undo earlier? We're going to go over, select our multiple undo, and then check it out. These are all the actions I've done in here. So check this out. I have done 666 steps since we started this webinar. So right here, and so check it out. Here's weld two shapes. That's the action that I've done. So let's go right here. I'm going to click on there. And it's going to go back all these little steps. And I just unwelded. So super easy. I didn't have to hit Control Z over and over again. All right, so let's go back to the modify panel. So here's subtract. I cannot emphasize this enough, guys. Look at the pictures. Look at the pictures. It's going to tell you visually what's going to happen. So subtract is going to take your top shape, cut it out of your bottom one, and it's also going to get rid of the top shape, like a cookie cutter. So let's do subtract. And so now we have that cut out. Now subtract all. It looks like the same thing. Now it does the same result, however, the top shape will still stay. We don't get rid of the top shape. So if we go right here to subtract all, wow, nothing happened. That's not true. It subtracted it there. So we have that set. Let me move that. Okay, we're good. So now let's go right here. Intersect is going to only keep the parts of your design that are overlapping. So let's go right here to intersect. Shoom, right there. Divide is going to take each line that's in there and break it apart into a new object. Let's go right here. So now we have two objects there. And then crop. This is better for another design, so I'm going to kind of modify the example in here. So crop is like how you're familiar with cropping pictures. So let's go ahead and let's say I want this circle to be like a striped circle. So let's go right here. Let's go ahead and make some stripes. So this kind of uses some tools we did earlier. Let's go ahead. I'm going to do my duplicate. So I'm going to do Alt button, click and drag. I want my stripes to be even. So let's go ahead, select all of these. Remember this panel I used earlier. So we're going to center them on each other. Cute, cute, nice. And then we want to respace them vertically. So let's go ahead and do vertical. And so now we have them all set. So these stripes are not as long. So I'm going to go over here, bring this down. And now I'm going to realign them. And then I'm going to go right here. And if we respace it, then it's going to respace them evenly. Okay. So now check this out. See how some of them are in front of the circle and some of them are not? It's all about the order that you make your shapes. So I'm going to get my circle. I'm going to right click on it and bring it to the front. So check that out. It's up front. So now I have multiple objects here and I have my circle on top. So if I go back to my modify panel, then this is going to crop areas that are overlapping. So basically I'm using the circle to crop the background. So let's do crop. So check it out. So now I have a striped circle. Pretty cool. All right, so almost done. I'm just gonna do a couple more things and then I'll take more questions if you have it, and then maybe I'll give you a preview of some stuff I'm working on. All right, so we have our offset panel. Pretty self-explanatory. This makes a line off of our shape. So we go over to offset, select it. This creates a line, and then we can even change the distance that the line is off. And then hit apply. And now we have a line off of our shape. Now, this is going to be useful, one, for rhinestone outlines, and two, to create space between colors. So if you watch any of my design videos or YouTube videos, you'll know that this is one of my favorite tools. I think it's really important. Definitely check out some other videos or teachable classes, because our TRW Academy classes, because that is pretty awesome. Okay, so right here, pop-up cards. This is for paper. I'm gonna skip it. Skip, skip, skip. These are things you don't need. And then right here, this icon here is our rhinestone panel. I'm over towards the bottom. Andrea, just open it, close Silhouette and reopen it. Now, if you can't see your rhinestone panel icon now, it might be hidden, okay? So this arrow right here shows you icons that didn't make it in the toolbar. So check that before you say you don't have it. And then right here, we have our rhinestone panel. So I do have a video going up on YouTube next week where I go over the rhinestone panel. So I'm not going to do too much. I'm just going to show you this super fast. So we have this right here, and then let me draw a circle too. So rhinestone panel is a way to convert things. Keep in mind, there is no perfect software with rhinestones, okay? You're probably going to have to do editing at some point in time. So right here, we have our effects or our fills. This is none. So this is if you converted something over and want to take it away. This is edge. This is, it takes the line and it converts that line over to rhinestones, but it takes away the inside of this. How do we know when videos are posted to YouTube? Beulah, you have to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So go to the Rhinestone World on YouTube. There's a button that says subscribe. And then you also need to find, there's a bell icon on there. Turn on that bell to get notifications that we've uploaded a video. So going back to the fills, we can see this will convert this line over. This linear fill will do a grid. It goes from left to right. It's great for things with sharp lines, sharp corners. And then radial fill goes from the outside in. Not super great for this. You can see the edge is good, but the inside gets a little bit fuzzy. So I go back to that. Radial fill. So if we do the linear fill for the circle, you can see it doesn't do well with tapering right there on that top part. But if we do radial fill, you can see it's a nice clean circle working from the inside in. So moving quickly because we're almost out of time. With Silhouette Studio, because we've converted over to rhinestones, I can go ahead and stretch this out and it will place more rhinestones or take them away, but they're all the same size. We don't have to worry about our shape moving or anything like that. And there you go. Sometimes my computer freezes because I'm running a lot of software right now. So you can see it'll fill it in, and we have that all set right there. And then we can even change the size of the rhinestones. So right now we're using SS10 rhinestones. That is the most common size of rhinestone. Let's say we want to do SS6. It still keeps the overall size of our shape, but it changes the size of the rhinestones. And then here I have my 10 in there. I can change my spacing by using the slider. I can make it closer together, further apart. If you want a sparse look, I wouldn't go any closer than 0.022 apart. That's the closest I would go. You can do that all set right there. Now let's say you do want to ungroup your rhinestones. So if you do need to do some editing, maybe your fill doesn't look super great, we would go right here to release rhinestones. This is basically a big ungroup of all of them. You'll see that each stone has a square around it right now. So I can click off and move these rhinestones, move them right there. So this is something that you could nudge your rhinestones around, edit it once you convert it over. You would want to use tools from the align panel or the spacing panel to kind of make it work super well. Okay, so that is a super fast and quick overview of Silhouette Studio Designer Edition. Do you guys have any questions on anything, or do you want me to repeat anything? So Terry, are there pre-made stars in the program? Not yet. I think the newest version actually does have some, so it's pretty cool. Where do you turn off the cutting mat? So that's going to be the top of the right panel, page settings, right here, the middle section, cutting mat cameo. You would just do none if you do no cutting mat. Will you do a video on how to import files from TRW into Designer Edition? Brought the home plate for sure. Yes, so let me go over, and I'm going to go over to our YouTube channel and show you on the screen. Can we use the line tool to guide the rhinestones? Yeah, you can use the line tool,
on the circle
or
and the hockey player, and just come over.
It auto-played a video. Or in the rhinestone panel, we also have the freehand tool, and we can draw lines of rhinestones like that. What I would do for rhinestones and lines is I would just draw a line, select it, and then do edge fill to convert that over. All right, so I'm going to show you our YouTube channel to show you some stuff with that. So, okay, first of all, so if you come to our YouTube channel, this is our channel, so you won't see it. It'll look a little bit different. Let me actually, 1 second. I'll do it as an incognito. So we're going to go over here. Let's go to youtube.com/the Rhinestone World. Okay, so if you want to go to our YouTube channel.
Hey there, TRW crew, Matt.
So if you want to do that, you're going to go right here to subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube videos. Oh, I'm not signed it, but you're going to do subscribe, and then there's a little bell that'll show up. Click that bell, and it'll notify you when new videos go up. And then if you're looking for a video on our channel, so someone said, will you do a video on how to import files from TRW into Designer? Then go to our channel, click the search button. It says open SVG in Silhouette Studio. Something like that. So then, right here, how to import and cut SVG files from TRW packs in Silhouette Studio. There you go.